Property number 5, multiplicative property. Multiplicative property is the fifth inequality property for the real numbers. According to the multiplicative property, if x, y, and z belong to real numbers, at z, which is greater than 0, if x is less than y, then x times z is lesser than y times z. If I plug in x equals to 2, y equals to 4, 2 is lesser than 4, then 2 times 4 is lesser than 4 times 4, because 8 is lesser than 16. Similarly, at z less than 0, if x is less than y, then x times z is greater than y times z. Because remember, x equals to 2 and y equals to 4, x is lesser than y, 2 is lesser than 4. If we take the product of both sides with the z, which is lesser than 0, suppose it is -1, the left side will be greater than the right side, which means that -2 is greater than -4. Look, according to the multiplicative property, x, y, and z are some real numbers. At z greater than 0, if z is greater than 0, at the same time, if x is less than y, for example, x is greater than 0, but at the same time x is less than y, then x times z is lesser than y times z. We just got the proof here. If I plug in x equals to 2 and y equals to 4, x is lesser than y, 2 is lesser than 4. And then when I take its product with the z, suppose my z is 4. So 2 times 4 is x times z, 4 times 4 is y times z, because y is 4, z is 4. So 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 4 is 16. 8 is lesser than 16. Therefore, x times z is lesser than y times z. If x is greater than 0, but at the same time x is lesser than y. In another situation, if x is lesser than 0, but at the same time x is lesser than y, then x times z is greater than y times z. Look, if I plug in x equals to 2, y equals to 4, so 2 is lesser than 4, and then when I take the product of both sides with the z, just take the product of 2 with the z, at what value? Lesser than 0. This time z is lesser than 0. So you can go in negative, can be -1, can be -2, can be -4, but as long as it is lesser than 0. So take the product of z here, which is -1, and product of z here, which is -1. 2 times -1 is -2. 4 times -1 is -4. So -2 is greater than -4. Remember, in negative, the lesser we have the number, the greater it is. -2 is greater than -4. In case, if this is +2 and this is +4, then we can say that 4 is greater than 2. But since both of the numbers are in negative, therefore the lesser number in negative will be greater. So I can say that -2 is greater than -4. So there was the multiplicative property for the inequality. Look, what do we mean by inequality? We use this inequality sign. There is no equality sign. Z is greater than 0, x is less than y, z is less than 0. So we use this inequality sign all the way from property 1 up to this. For all the inequality properties, we use this inequality sign. There is no equality sign. There is no equality here. Because of this inequality symbols, we call it properties of inequality for the real numbers. Let me prove the multiplicative property again. Let's take an example of the multiplicative property. For example, if 2, 4 and 2 belong to real numbers, at 2 greater than 0, if 2 is less than 4, then 2 times 2 is lesser than 4 times 2. It implies that 4 is lesser than 8. This is one situation. In another situation where at -1, which is lesser than 0, if 2 is lesser than 4, then 2 times -1 is greater than 4 times -1, which implies that -2 is greater than -4. Because -1 is lesser than 0, so 2 times -1 is -2. 4 times -1 is -4. -2 is greater than -4.